All right, welcome back, and let's get started with our lab 3. I talked about that you can go to theonegenerator.com to get a set of passwords. We want to test multiple passwords in a file, read that file, and test against our criteria, which I've outlined. Okay, so let's open up a browser and go to theonegenerator.com. And I have the password generator, and I'm going to have this be, we'll say, 9 characters. Okay, so if I generate, we see all kinds of characters we have here. Okay, so if I go to CSV and I say this is passwords, I have a data size of, let's just make it 25 so it's a little more manageable. Generate CSV. Okay, this should be downloading. It's not. Okay, so what I'm going to do is back to dashboard. So I'm just going to generate these manually, put them inside a notepad file, right? So I'll pause the video and okay, so I just generated a few sets of data. So I have 13 passwords here that I got. I'm going to save this file, put it in SDET files. I'm going to call this passwords. Alright, very good. I'm going to minimize this for now and come to Eclipse. Alright, so new class, I'm going to call this lab 3. Here's my main. Okay, so what's the objective here is we're going to read a file of passwords and then test against our criteria. Okay, so how's this going to work? We're going to do string file name equals, let's open up Windows Explorer. Again, this is the path of my files. And our file is passwords.txt. Okay, so our process again is file equals new file from the file name. Okay, and bring in that file. Okay, now we're going to read this. When we read it, we're going to put it into a string, right, an array of passwords, and it's going to be new string and then again there were 13 passwords, 13 items in that password list. Okay, we're going to have our buffered reader, br equals new buffered reader from a new file reader of file. Okay, again, hopefully this is a little bit more second nature for you to write this line. Alright, so here we go. Put that inside a try catch. Alright, so before we execute this, right, we are going to do our for loop. For integer I equals 0, I less than passwords.length, I plus plus. Now we're going to do our, actually no, other way around. This try again is going to come before the for loop. We don't want to continually open the file. There we go. Okay, I got to fix some of this stuff here. Okay, so every time we are iterating through, we are reading, we're going to do br.readline. We're going to put that inside passwords at I. Okay, and then we need to handle that exception, which is a possible input-output exception. Okay, so again, these aren't really that common, so I'm just going to put inside here sysout error could not read file. Okay, and also sysout error could not open file. Alright, so we'll just do that here. Okay, so a couple of catches that we might run into. Okay, just to make sure we have this, let's do a for loop to iterate through everything. So we iterate through string password. For each password, inside passwords, we're going to print our password. Pretty simple enough. There we go. Okay, So now we're going to test against the criteria. So we're going to iterate through each password, and what we want to make sure is that, so condition 1 is if we outline in our lab, it contains a number, Condition 2 contains a letter, and then condition 3 contains special character, and we'll just find these as those 3 right there. Maybe one more. Okay. Okay, so let's come up there. All right. So how do we make sure that our condition contains a number? In fact, all of these, what we'll need to do is iterate through each character. So right, we need to say for, need another for loop, integer n equals 0 and less than the password dot length n plus plus. Alright, now inside that for loop, now we're going to test our conditions. Okay, so what do we have going on here, right? So we're iterating through the passwords. Now we're iterating through the password characters. And for each character, we need to see if it contains a number or a letter or a special character. And there's a couple ways of doing this. If we're testing to see if each character contains one of those 3, that's one way to do it. But if we're testing to see if there contains at least a number and a character, that's really what we're concerned with, because well, there's multiple ways we can have a password verifier. So we'll do it one way, and maybe we'll talk about the other way. So what we want to do is say what we want to do actually is say if a set contains the character, right? So we're kind of thinking about it backwards. We're going to say if a set of numbers. What's a set of numbers? Well, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If this set contains the password at n, right? Then password dot substring at n, because password's not an array, so we need to get the substring at n, and then n plus 1. And there we close up all the parentheses. So if it contains this will test to see if we have a number, right? So we can say sysout position, and we'll concatenate n, say it contains a number. So let's actually run this and see what we get here. There we go. So this pulls out all the numbers, right? Position 1, 2, and 5 contains a number. 0, 4, 5 contains a number. Okay? Okay, so now we have the condition if it contains a number. Let's now say, let's say, we can do else if, and now we want the set of letters, right? Which is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. If this set dot contains the password substring at n, comma, n plus 1, right? Right. So if this set contains the substring of a character, then we're going to say position n contains a letter. And now we're going to run this. So there we go. So now we have all the letters. So in this case, we have a number, letter, and number, letter. Okay. Okay, so very good. Now you can imagine what the last one's going to be if it contains, actually, so this is here. So we need one other one to see an else if it contains condition 3, which is our special characters list, which is just these ones for now. Everything else is the same. We'll say it contains a special character. And now we can run this. So now we have a special character here, and some of these actually don't have the special character. So, so this is one way to do it, right? So we'll say for each password, let's assume that there's no number, no letter, and special character. And then only if there is a number, a letter, and a character do we actually say that it passes. So what we want to have is Boolean. So Boolean has number, will initialize to false. Boolean has letter, will initialize to false. Boolean has, we'll say, special character, also initialized to false. Again, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we're going to assume that it's not the case. Then if we find it, then we're going to say has number equals true. Similarly, we're going to do, whoops, if there's a letter, we're going to say has letter equals true. Finally here, has special character equals true. Okay, so we could expand this. For example, if we expand this to a couple of other characters, and then we can also say something like Boolean has invalid character. If we assume this is true, right? And then if that character doesn't have a letter, it's not a number, it's not a letter, it's not a special character, then we can say, then we can assume if it's anything else, we'll say position n contains an invalid character. And then we will want to say has invalid character equal to false, or actually equal to true. So we need to assume this is false as well. Okay, so now we can run this, and here we have everything set up, right? So all of these, we should see something 0 through 8 every time, right? Because we have an if, else if, and then else. So each character in the password should be assigned either number, letter, invalid character, or special character. So when we are all done iterating through the sets, right? Iterating through the set, at the very end, after the for loop, then we can have our tests and exception handling. And again, there's a couple ways to handle this. Right off the bat, we can say if has invalid character is true, right? Then throw invalid character exception. We can do else if, and see here it's kind of a matter of what we want to do, right? We'd say something like if it's the case that we can say not has number or not has letter or not has special character. Okay, so now we need to think a little bit of the logic here, if this makes sense, right? So if has number is false, or if this is false, or if this is false. So if any of these are true, right? Let's see here. So let's think about this. If a condition is, if it has, if everything is true, right? If everything has a number, a letter, and a character, then this is going to be false. It's going to be true, 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 which would make it, or it's going to be false, false, false. So this is not going to value to anything. In other words, this is throw criteria error. If one of these is, right? So if it has a number, but not a letter and not a character, special character, this will be false, but one of these will be true and one of these will be true. And since we're doing or, this will evaluate to true. So again, we can say sysout, we can say here, missing criteria. And here we can say sysout invalid character. Okay, now I'm going to comment out these since we don't need to see these anymore. Okay, so now we run this here. Alright, so we should see all kinds of things here. Looks like all of these have invalid characters. And let's see here. Maybe I should expand my invalid characters here. So we have this, and let's just keep on going here. Let's see if that will eliminate some. Okay, we still have some invalid characters, that's fine. Oh, we also have capital letters, right? So we want to do dot contains, let's see here. Let's change this to dot to lowercase. Alright, so even more complication here. Okay, so there we have a valid. So by the way, or we can just say else we can just print out sysout valid password. Right? For each new password, again, let's also where do we print the password? We want to, let's add this line here. Okay. Okay, invalid character. Here, there's a valid password. Has a letter, has a character, has a special character, and doesn't have any invalid characters. Okay, so that pretty much looks like this is handling it quite well. Looks like the passwords that we generated, a lot of them had some funky symbols in here. So let's see, that first one should be valid. If I change out the, let me also include plus and equals. That should reduce a few more as well. Okay, so there we have a combination again of valid passwords, invalid characters, and so forth. Let's make sure that we have one that, let's say this one does not have a number. Alright, so let's see. So this one, missing criteria. Okay. And let's have one more where we are missing a letter. So we're going to have okay. So we should have two now with missing criteria. Missing criteria, missing criteria. Okay. So we have it right. And I mean, all we need to do now is just add our simple exception handling, and we can say something like, let's see, let's get out of all this. Okay, so have a class invalid character exception. Okay, and then again, let's have our constructor give us some information. Invalid character exception. Because if we have a invalid character, we don't know, okay, what is the invalid character, right? If the client's not going to know what's the invalid character. So we want to say invalid character exception. So we need to give it its constructor. We'll say string character. And this is public. Not a constructor. Okay, there we go. And typo, there we go. Okay, and I'm going to say here, I'm going to say string ch So this dot ch equals ch. Okay, I'm going to override the toString public string to string method, and I'm going to say return invalid character exception, and then concatenate ch. Okay, now when we throw this exception, right? In fact, what we can do right away, so if there's an invalid exception, we actually don't even need to handle that here. We can handle that right here. We can say throw new missing, or what is it, invalid character exception. And what is that invalid character? Well, it's this guy right there. That's what we want to pass into the parameter. And this is what we need to handle inside our try catch. So we can throw it right here. See, we don't have a try catch block. We can throw it right here. We can try. Actually, let me take this out here. We need to extends exception, right? So when we now throw this, we can just actually, we don't even need to try, we're just going to throw the invalid exception. We're going to say sysout. Actually, we can just say e.toString. Right, we can just do all this in one line. Okay. So that takes care of that exception, which means all we need to do now is see if any of these other ones are true. So we could say we can say if we have a number criteria exception, right? Then we can say string. This is all going to be password. And we're going to say this password, this dot password equals password. And this is the number criteria exception, and we're going to concatenate password. So what is this going to say? So in other words, once we come down to the very end, now we can actually isolate this out and say if has number is not true, right? And that means we want to make it true and say, so in other words, if it's false, we want to say, okay, then we're going to throw a new number criteria exception, and we're going to pass password. Okay, now all this will then be inside the try catch block, and now we can catch number criteria exception E. Okay, and that's a typo. Okay, very good. Now let's see, that has number, so then we can say, you know, let's just make this all one line to make it a little bit simpler to read. Then we can just say all these other ones, say else if has letter. Okay, so if it has a letter, then we need this exception. Right, so this is a letter criteria exception. So I'm just going to copy this down here for the constructor and for the message. And I need to change this to number criteria exception. And then I also need to handle it. Now, let's add exception to the existing catch clause. Right, we can do this just fine, right? Because these aren't competing exceptions. And finally, if there is a has special character, right, then we'll want to have that exception. So has, this is special character criteria, You can copy this for the constructor and for the message. Okay, so so we're catching these, and we want that criteria. Add that to the existing catch clause, and then we're just going to say sysout invalid password, and then say sysout e.toString. Okay, so basically, if we find an invalid character right away, we're going to get out of this block. Actually, what we should do is break, right? Because we're going to get out of the try catch. Okay, that'll get out of the loop. Okay, so let's see now. This is turning into quite a bit of a application here. So let's run this and just see what happens. Okay. Okay, so we have our first one is invalid password. We don't have a number, right? We have an invalid password. We have don't have a letter. Okay, that's right. Invalid password does not have a number. Okay, so that is something is not quite right here. Let's see. Where does it say invalid password? Right here for the, let's see, invalid password here. So if we have a number, letter, or special character, that's when we're entering the invalid password. And there are times where, let's see, let's try and debug this here. Invalid password, number criteria, that's correct. Letter criteria, number criteria, okay. Special character criteria, okay. Let me make this a little bit clearer and say else. We're going to say sysout valid password. So now we can run this here. So we can look at what is it finding any valid passwords here? So there's a valid password. Let's see here. So we aren't using this. So for each time we enter the loop, we are initializing our variables to false. And then we are testing this condition. I think if we take out this break, so we're breaking too soon. There we go. Yeah, that should do it. That looks right. So I was breaking out of the loop, which actually might have occurred before we found a letter, and then actually we tried those errors here. So, okay, so I think that worked. I just had to take out the break inside this. I wanted to leave it running. Okay, so that is our reader that will read passwords, and basically we can handle whatever the client throws at us, and we're able to tell them the result. So we should actually probably take out these prints. If this is working correctly, then we no longer need to see each password, only that's actually not a bad idea if we print that password. Here we go, and actually just make this a little bit nicer. Concatenate. There we go. We could put this on /n. There we go. Valid password. There's a password, invalid password, and why. Okay, so there is our there's our little algorithm to handle file of passwords and handle the proper criteria.